my channel. I'm so glad you stopped by today because today we are finally going to get Vaporeon finished. Yes, we will finally have the first 3 evolutions of Eevee finished. We've done Flareon and Jolteon and it's finally time to do Vaporeon. Anyways, let's get started. Okay guys, so I'm going to show you guys how to put the body piece together first. So basically, Vaporeon's body pattern is going to be almost exactly the same as Jolteon and Flareon's. The only thing different is the tail, and then of course we need to add all the fins and frills around the face. So I'm just going to briefly go over all the different pieces that you'll need. I need the side pieces, I need the inside parts of the legs, and then I need the belly piece. And then the last piece that we need for the body is going to be the underside of the tail. Basically right now on the main body piece, all we have is the top piece of the tail, and it's divided in half. If you were to sew it together right now, you would only have one weird looking fin. So basically what having the bottom piece of the tail does is you sew each end of the tail to this, and it creates 2 different fins. So it basically divides the tail into 2 different pieces. So for the sewing, like I did with Flareon and Jolteon, we're going to start with adding the legs to the body piece. So we're going to take those inside parts and the outside parts that are connected to the main body, and we're going to sew all the way around that. After all the leg pieces are sewn together, we're going to add the belly piece and sew the 2 body pieces to each side of this belly piece. Now the main difference right now is after we sew that on, we need to sew down the tail a little bit, and then we need to sew the bottom of the tail to the 2 sides of the tail. I'm going to leave the back of this open because we need it open so we can add the wireframe. So after that, we're going to flip everything right side out, and then we need to add everything to a wireframe. So the wireframe I left very simple. The only thing different with this wireframe and the ones that I used for the previous evolutions, of course I need a very long piece of wire to go into the tail. And if you want, you can even break this in half and have it go into each end of the fins, but I didn't do this because I didn't find it necessary. So right now I have all the legs and the end of the tail stuffed, and I'm going to add the body to the wireframe. So I'm just going to run all the wires for each leg into that leg, and then we're going to run the tail onto that. After that, we're going to start sewing everything closed. Now the main difference with sewing the body closed on this piece versus any other piece is I need to add a bit of a fin decoration going down the spine. So I have this piece of felt that I've cut into that pattern, and I'm going to have to sew this closed while sewing this on. So basically while you're doing kind of like a zigzaggy motion with your sewing, you're going to be running the thread also through this felt. So I did that first with the tail, I stuffed it and everything, and then I'm going to do the same thing to the back of the body, and then I'm going to stuff the rest of that. Now of course this fur is way too long for Vaporeon, and I'm going to end up trimming it a lot more than it is now, but the reason I have this particular fur is it's the same kind that I used for Jolteon and Flareon, and I wanted the pieces to look as coexisting as they could because they're all going to the same owner, and I wanted them to look like a set. So I'm using the same fabric that I did for the other 2 pieces. So again, I'm going to be shaving a lot of this fur off. I just want it all to be the same texture as the other 2 pieces. Okay, now we're going to start on sewing the frill of the neck and the little fins that go on the face. So basically these fabric are nice and short furred fabric, and I have them doubled up and the patterns are drawn out on them. So I'm going to take my sewing machine and I'm going to follow these lines. I'm going to start with the frill. Now I'm not going to be sewing the line in the middle of the frill, that's where we're going to have an opening for it later. So I'm just going to go all the way around the outside of it. Once I have that sewn, I'm going to cut off all the extra fabric, and then I'm going to flip it right side out. I'm then going to use my sewing machine to add a little bit of line work to the frill. I'm going to be doing the same thing to the little fins. I'm just going to go around them. I'm going to make sure to leave an opening so I can flip them right side out. After they're sewn, I'm going to cut off all the extra fabric, and then we're going to do the same thing that we did with the frill and use the sewing machine to add a little bit of line work to it. And then one last thing we need to do to the fins to make them look more like Vaporeons is we need to add a blue top to them. So basically I'm going to take a dark blue strip of fur fabric and I'm going to sew this to the very top of each fin. And this is pretty much what the fins look like right now. I'm probably going to shave these down a little bit as well because they're also a little bit too fluffy. And that's pretty much all the sewing that we have for right now. We need to move on to making the clay face. So I'm going to take my foam ball that I use as a base and I'm going to cover it in tinfoil. Remember, remove the foam ball before you bake this in the oven because bad things happen. And then I'm going to start creating a nice thick layer of clay on top of this. Now if you guys are curious, the type of clay I'm using is Original Sculpey. So once I have a nice thick layer of clay put down, I'm going to start adding a little bit more, that way we can start shaping the face. So mainly I'm going to be adding some to the middle of the face and making this snout, and then of course deciding where the eyes go and smoothing everything out. Now for this piece, I'm doing my best to make it look like the other two as I can. I don't have them right now with me for references, so it's a little bit difficult, but I'm going to be trying to make it look as close to the same shape as Flareon and Jolteon's face, because again, they're going to be in a set and I want them all to look very similar. So I mainly want to focus on the eyes and the nose and getting them in the same position as the other two pieces. I don't need to worry too much about the rest of the face, I mainly just need to get it the same shape. The rest of the face is going to be covered in fur, so you don't need to add any other detail to it. Once I'm happy with how the face looks and I think I replicated the other two faces pretty decently, I'm going to put this in the oven at 275 Fahrenheit for probably about 45 minutes. Again, remember to take that foam ball out of the head. And that's pretty much all the clay pieces for Vaporeon. Once this is out of the oven and it's cooled, we can start on painting it. Okay, so we're going to start with the eyes, and they're very similar to how Jolteon's eyes were. The shape of the purple blending into the black is a little bit different, so I'm just going to be doing that right now. So I'm going to start with the purple of the eye. I'm going to let this dry once I have a good layer put down, and then I'm going to add the black to the eye and start blending it into the purple. If you do this correctly, it'll make it look like the eye has a nice purple sheen and kind of creates the illusion of it not just being black on the top and purple on the bottom, but it makes it look like, oh, that's just a darker version of purple, and it's kind of like a shadowing effect. And then once the black and the purple are dried, we're going to add some white to the eye to make it look like they have a bit of a reflective quality. Also, while I'm at it, I'm going to paint the nose black. The nose is really simple, it just needs maybe 1 or 2 coats of black. There really isn't any shading or anything involved in it. And then the last bit of detail is going to be the eyelids. We're going to paint them kind of a nice aqua blue. I'm trying to get very close to the fur fabric color, so hopefully this works out. Usually this comes out a little bit darker because acrylic dries darker than it is when it's wet. So you actually have to make the color a bit lighter than the color you're trying to imitate to make it come out closer to that color. Okay, and that's pretty much all the painting for the face. I'm going to apply a thin layer of resin over this and let it sit and dry overnight, and then we can put everything together. Okay, the first thing we need to do before we add Vaporeon's head to the piece is we need to tighten up this neck hole so it's easier to work with. It's just a little too wide right now. So I'm going to run my needle and thread in and out through the fabric, going all the way around this hole, and then I'm going to pull tight and tie this off. After that, we can take the frill for the neck and we're going to sew this into place around that hole. Then we can take the face that we have. I've glued this back onto that foam ball that we sculpted onto originally, and I'm going to push the wire through the foam ball. Now these foam balls actually have a small hole on one side of them. I guess it's the way they're like formed or something. So usually when I glue the head to the foam ball, I like to leave this hole to the back so I can have a little starting point for when I'm shoving my wire into the foam. The glue that I'm using is a combination of my hot glue gun and E6000 glue. Okay, so I'm going to start adding some fur to the face, and then once we get to a certain point, we'll need to add the fins to the face. So for this, I just kind of roughly measured the shape of the face, and then I started cutting out fabric to fit different spots. So the little strip around the neck is just going to be the measurement from like one corner of the eye all the way down the neck and to the other corner of the eye. And then you do need to remember that the very top of Vaporeon's head is going to be a darker blue, so we're going to be using darker fabric for that. It's the same dark blue fabric that we used on the fins. Once we get the fins in place, we're going to start gluing more of the fur fabric around the face and going around the details of the eyes and the nose and the mouth. So basically cover everything in fur other than the main details. And then the last thing you need to do is let this sit overnight to dry, and then the following day you can shave off all the excess fur. So right now it looks like a shaggy mess, but we'll fix that later. But we're pretty much done with everything other than shaving the body and the face. guys, and that's how I did a Vaporeon. I had so much fun and I can't wait to send him off to his new owner. Anyways guys, if there's any other Pokemon you want to see made, maybe we'll take a break from Eevee and her evolutions, and maybe we'll try one of the newer generation Pokemon. I haven't really done any of that and I thought it'd be really fun to try, so if you guys recommend anything, leave comments down below and I'll see what I can do. Anyways guys, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!